That's really nice. That's really
Ooh.
nice. Yeah. Hey everyone, welcome to the Tom's Hardware Podcast for June 6th, 2023. As always, I'm Tom's Hardware Editor-in-Chief, Abram Pilch, joined by Raspberry Pi expert Ash Hill. Les is out today. We have three very special guests with us today from Pi Wars, David, Tim, and Mike. And they're going to talk about the return of Pi Wars and what it is. So how are you guys doing?
Yeah, great, thanks.
Yeah, doing well. Yeah,
We've not long launched Pi Wars 2024, so we're all excited about getting going on it.
Great. Is this the first Pi Wars that you've had back with a full in-person show?
Yep.
it is.
That's real excitement.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So how have you handled the first of all, for folks who don't know, what is Pi Wars?
Pi Wars is a robotic competition, a non-destructive robotic competition.
Oh.
It's an idea I came up with back in, I think it was 2013, 2014, to give people an excuse to use the Raspberry Pi to build something and actually do something with it. Really a learning exercise for people. We thought it would be quite fun. Mike and I have always been fans of Robot Wars in the UK and BattleBots, I suppose it is in the US. And it was really just that excuse, get people to program and build around the Raspberry Pi.
One thing I've always liked about Pi Wars is how unique the not really competitions, what do you want to call it? The little events that you have that people can build the bots for. Can you talk about some of what you've had in the past that people had to create bots to complete?
Yeah,
you know what I'm asking.
So we every year we have I think probably one of the favourites is the obstacle course, where you don't see the obstacle course before or any information about it before you get to the competition. We've had a turntable, we've had a travelator, it's like a running machine with the belt. And we've had
the treadmill was a particular favorite from that was 2019, I think, because it had a drop off at the end. So if you didn't manage to get onto the treadmill and drive off like uphill effectively, you'd be flung off into a little pit at the bottom.
Oh no.
We don't make it easy.
Well, of course not.
And of course, the other one is called Pi Noon. We've rechristened it the Hindenburg disaster this year. But basically, you have to pop balloons on the other robot. So you have two robots in the arena trying to pop each other's balloons, which are mounted on the robot.
Now that sounds like a familiar Nintendo game to me.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So without giving too much away about next year, are there any events or obstacles that you guys have come up with that you're able to share with us today?
Yep. We've got 7 challenges. So we've got they're all on the website anyway, so we can say what they are. We've got it used to be the straight line speed test, then it became the straight-ish line speed test, and this year it's escape the volcanic eruption.
I love it.
They're all disaster themed this year. It's called Disaster Zone. Unfortunately, we were put in Disaster Zone on in the middle of the pandemic, so it kind of we had to cancel it because we went into lockdown pretty soon. What other challenges we've got the eco disaster, which is about sorting barrels of toxic waste into the right places. We have escape route, which is a blind maze, so that you can't see what you're doing. And there's various methods you can use to get through it and that kind of thing. Minesweeper, which you have to find and defuse the bombs, or you have to find the red coloured panels, drive onto them, and then that diffuses it, and then another one lights up. And we've also got the Zombie Apocalypse, which is a shooter. You have to outfit your robot normally with like a Nerf gun type arrangement.
That's pretty cool.
and shoot the zombies out the windows.
That's cool.
All these courses were, or most of them were built in for Pi Wars 2020, which, for obvious reasons, didn't happen. So it was an appropriate name for the time, but we're bringing it back because for the first time ever, we're actually getting other people to build the courses. Previous years, I've built all the courses, and that's an awful lot of hard work.
Yes, it
is. We found them out in 2020, and they've been sitting in people's lofts, conservatories, garages, and hopefully they haven't warped too much for this year's event.
Do some of the mechanisms in the courses use Raspberry Pis?
Yes, some of them
I was hoping.
probably. Picos, in previous years, we've used Arduinos. But they some of them do use that.
So you brought up the Pico, and that is a good thing to bring up, because one thing we were talking about before the show, before we had you guys on, was how you guys expect the Pico to influence this year's Pi Wars. Like, do you think you're going to see more of those?
I think so. When we did previous Pi Wars, we've not allowed the Pico to be the main processor. But this year we are allowing that because Raspberry Pis are still a bit hard to get hold of. It's getting better, but it's not perfect yet. So we are allowing the RP2040 chips to be used, but only in the Raspberry Pi format. So that's the ones that are made by Raspberry Pi. Reason for that is we want as far as we can, a level playing field. We don't allow other processors, other small board computers to be used, simply because we want a level playing field for everybody. We're also fans of the Raspberry Pi, so it sort of helps us support the use of the Pi.
Very good. That makes sense too, because there are a lot of third-party boards out there that use the RP2040, and someone could easily just design their own PCB and say, "Oh, I put an RP2040 on it, and now it's allowed," and they could have a big leg up.
Yeah, we've decided that there's sort of a way around it, but not really. You can, as long as you've got a Raspberry Pi there, you could design your own 2040 board, but not as the primary one.
Ah.
So the primary computer, the primary controlling computer of the robot, has to be a Raspberry Pi made machine. So that's the
So traditionally, in previous years, when it comes to like vision-based challenges, obviously you'd be using like the highest powered like Raspberry Pi you could get, because obviously it takes a lot of processing power to be basically recording a video capture and then also processing that image in real time. So in previous years, we have seen people have sort of additional sort of camera setups that have their own processing on board that then relays the sort of semi-processed image back to the main computing sort of Pi, so that you can kind of farm out bits of it. But as long as there is a Raspberry Pi that's handling everything, then at the core, then that's kind of allowed, I believe.
So I'm a firm believer that limitations can really push creative boundaries, or push people's creativity. So are there any other limitations that people need to be aware of for what they're allowed to do in the competition?
There's there's a size limit, I suppose, is the big one. We have a limit on size. You have to be. It's about you have US letters, don't you? It's about it's about an A4 piece of paper. But there's extensions to it, and you can have attachments that go outside that. But there's maximum length, width, and height.
Does it have to do with just because of the way the courses are designed, or
Yeah.
was that always in place?
Yeah, it's we haven't always had size limits. The second year we ran, was it the second year or was it the first year?
First year.
No, it was the first year we had sumo.
Yeah, we didn't have any limitations, and we had a sumo competition, which has now been replaced by Pi Noon, where that was robot upon robot, and there was a Playmobil pirate ship against the smallest robot you can get, basically.
Oh.
And, it left it quite unfair. But because we're doing much more complex courses now, the robots have to be able to get around them. We can only build to a certain size, so we've put a limit on the size of the robots, knowing that they should be able to get around the courses. If they go too big, they just won't be able to turn.
That would be unfortunate to find out in real time.
Yeah.
See people getting the hacksaws out to.
Yeah. So David
And then-
earlier. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go on. After you.
But David was pulling out some cars earlier and stuff. What
Yes.
do you have?
Oh,
Are these
let's
things
see.
that you've used?
This one is actually a sort of a previous contender that I actually entered with Hitchin Hackspace when I was sort of part of their team.
Nice.
And we've got a couple of awards that we won from it. But this is just sort of showing a fairly stereotypical chassis nowadays, where we've got sort of articulated front sort of suspension, but it's sort of tank steering. So you've got sort of two wheels on one side and two on the other, and they generally drive in the same direction on these two to sort of either sort of skid left or skid right kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That's one size, and you can see we've got the actual Raspberry Pi sort of laminated in the middle between the actual chassis for strength and for agility, for it to be sort of low down weight wise, because obviously some parts of the assault course, so the obstacle course, can be leveled, can be quite steep. So if you end up with a very top heavy robot, you may be at a disadvantage. Then there's another one. This one never actually entered. This one was just a toy that I bought and removed the innards.
Like the tank tread.
Yeah, no, I bought it for that because I wanted to actually have a play, and 3D printing or making your own sort of treads and tracks is actually quite hard. But this one just sort of utilized the chassis and the motors of a pre-existing toy, so it was quite easy and quick to build. Sometimes
Does it have a Pi in it too?
Yep, it's just behind here.
Oh, I see it.
It's actually a Pi Zero, probably
Nice.
a 0W, probably.
That's
But,
pretty cool.
Yeah, that one does move quite quickly. I'm quite. You got to be careful.
So the first one you showed, you said you had 2 awards. What was the what did you win? Like, what was the course for?
Right, I actually can't remember now. This was 2018, I believe. So I think one of them is for the obstacle course, and one of them is for sort of Pi Noon. So this one was very nimble because it's obviously able to spin like in its own axis, so it can spin and get out of the way quite quickly. We also have sort of fairly high-powered motors on this one to allow it to overcome any friction and things like that. Because again, with like skid steering, if you're on sort of carpet, or if anyone else has been in previous years, if you're on AstroTurf, that's actually quite a grippy surface. So if you're trying to sort of literally skid a couple of sets of wheels, it's actually a lot of sort of grip you have to overcome, and having sort of very heavy robots with low-powered motors can, again, cause issues and cause it to not be able to sort of properly get out of the way or maneuver. So that's one of the reasons why we sort of pushed that one.
Very cool. So when was the first Pi Wars?
2014.
Oh, wow. You're coming up on almost 10 years. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yes, it is almost. Actually, yeah, it was December, I think it was 2014, wasn't it, Mike?
That's right, yeah, December 2014.
Yeah. We then went to 2015, skipped part of a year because we wanted to move when it was in the year, because we always imagined it being a competition for children, families, and we got quite a lot of interest from schools. So being in December doesn't really give them enough time to build and design and program a robot from early October to December. So we moved it to round about Easter, and it gives them the schools a lot more chance to actually program and get their robot ready. The school is the schools are who we really concentrate on, and making sure the courses can be completed by schools, because there's nothing worse than a team not being able to be competitive. And
it's a 2-day event, and the day one is basically the school's event, really.
So what kind of turnout have you guys had in the past, especially before 2020 hit, and what kind of turnout are you expecting for next year?
We've had up to 150 applicants to the event. We cut that down to 35 for each day. We accept 35 to 40 for each day, knowing that we are going to lose a few. Teams drop out, unfortunately. We just don't know how many people will apply this year. Hopefully enough. Encourage people to get their applications in as soon as they can. The deadline for applications is October the 1st, I believe it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, October the 1st. The form for applying is on the website, piwars.org.
So when people apply, do they have to give like an overview of what they're going to build? Does it have to be approved first?
Yeah, it's kind of they have to give a mixture of things. So they have to tell us about what their team is comprised of. They have to tell us sort of what plans they've got for the robot, but obviously some of the young teams don't necessarily know that when they start. So, and then the big one is, why do you want to join Pi Wars?
I think that's the main question, really, isn't it? I mean, the actual robot, we fully understand that is normally the last thing that gets built. There are deadlines for a reason, and normally that's when things happen, when you get squeezed up against a deadline. But yeah, it's the sort of we're quite sort of interested in why and sort of what it would mean to you and that kind of a thing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's great that this is coming back. Why do you feel like 2024 is the right year to bring it back?
Obviously, 2020 happened, and 2021 still lockdown, really. 22, we just couldn't. We had no idea how long it was going to take for everything to open up again. So 22 was out as well. We thought about possibly doing one this year, 2023. However, the shortage of pies meant that we knew some teams were going to have problems getting hold of the Raspberry Pis. And also the venues, they weren't quite sure what was going to be happening in 2023, because we were just coming out of lockdown in 22. So we thought we'd leave it another year and come back with the disaster zone that we were planning of having in 2020.
Yeah, so as you say, the Raspberry Pi availability, and I mean, there's the event, sort of, as you say, the event situation, which seems to be, people seem to be more comfortable with going out. It's not just a case of it now sort of opening up. We're trying to make sure that we're not sort of pushing people as well into sort of going to these kind of events. We want to make sure people want to go to them. So that's, again, one of the reasons why we've kind of held off in 2023, because it wasn't, people still weren't sure where they were going, but there now seems to be quite a sort of a pent up sort of need to go to these kind of events again and sort of have some fun, really. and sort of play with these kind of robots and go to these and see what other people are doing, because it's normally quite interesting to see other people's ideas on how to achieve some sort of task. It's normally sort of totally a different way to how someone else would have expected to do these kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great show and tell, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
that's a good way to put it.
And that's the fun, right? To go to events like Pi Wars, or like I mentioned before, I want to show my little Maker Faire project in a minute. Maker Faire stuff. You guys have Maker Faire in the UK, right?
Yeah, I went to one recently. Yeah. Actually, no, sorry, not Maker Faire. Yeah, we do get Maker Fairs in the UK. I can't remember the last one was actually, but yeah, we get that kind of thing. We've our Hackspace goes to these kind of things and sort of shows off what each individual members have been making and things like that. So yeah,
it's a lot of fun. You know, I love taking my kids to these things, and them to kind of look at what other people are doing. I have to say, the two Maker Fairs that we went to recently, there wasn't a ton of Pi stuff, but you know, that could obviously change. It's funny because I met some people there who were selling electronics projects based on Arduino, and I said, "Hey, have you thought about doing this in RP2040?" And they said, "What's RP2040?"
Where have you been?
Where have you been?
yeah, that's surprising.
Yeah, it was one company who was like launching their own line of like STEM kits for kids, and all based on Arduino. And I said, "Have you thought about RP2040?" They're like, "Oh, I don't know what that is."
Oh no.
Wow.
That's a shame.
And they're so accessible too.
Right? I mean, it would probably have made their components cheaper, because they were selling like a STEM kit that does just a few lights for like $50, $50. Wow. And you know, you can buy an RP2040 chip for what, like $3, like if you're not even buying it with the board. So I mean, anyway, and much more powerful than Arduino as it stands. But hey, speaking of things to share, Ash, you have some amazing projects you want to talk about that were the coolest projects we saw this month. Maybe some of these folks will show up to Pi Wars.
That would be pretty cool. And for those of you watching who aren't familiar, at Tom's Hardware, we cover Raspberry Pi projects all the time. It's a lot of fun. You guys make a lot of cool stuff, and we love showing it off. And once a month, I will gather a list of 10 projects to highlight again. And we call it the best, but honestly, I don't like having to pick something and take it out of the list. They're all fantastic, but here's just a list of 10 really cool ones that I wanted to show you guys 3 to get you excited. You can find the full list on Tom's Hardware. So the first one I wanted to share with you is this Raspberry Pi Pico powered tarot card reader. It uses an e-ink display, so even if it loses power, the last card that showed up is going to stay on the screen. But you push a button and it draws a card for you, and it uses EM noise to kind of randomly generate the card, and it could be upside down, or it could have like a glitch effect, and it's just kind of like, see how it's got this split image? It's just really neat and maybe kind of spooky. Whether or not it's your cup of tea, I don't know, but I thought it was a really clever project and a fun way to just use tarot cards with a Raspberry Pi. And it's got a little 3D printed housing, which I think that's always fun too, because if you could 3D print a case for it, why wouldn't you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that one's pretty neat. The next one I wanted to share is this Raspberry Pi Pico powered macro pad, but it's not for like a keyboard input, it's a mouse. So you've got these 4 buttons off to the side that does up, down, left, right. You've got 2 buttons to the left that are your left and right clicks. You can scroll by pressing, I think, both at the same time, and it can accept multiple key inputs at the same time. So you can do diagonal presses, and I mean, it just seems so inefficient and really difficult to get used to, but I absolutely adore it. And again, it's got a 3D printed housing. Like, it looks great, I think. And it says on the front, this is a mouse, because you wouldn't know that that's a mouse by looking at it. Oh, and it has, they used, I think, brown switches. It's got mechanical keys. So it's got like a really good click to those
brown
buttons.
switches. Whoa! They should.
Yeah, they made some joke about it.
Clicky.
Hold on. Cherry MX brown switches. Yeah, it's got those in it. But hey, they're nice. They're nice enough for what this is, right? Okay, and the third project I wanted to share with you guys that I thought was really neat, because I live near train tracks, and sometimes on the show you might hear a train in my background audio. I have to hit the mute button when that happens. This is a train spotting project. They have a Raspberry Pi sitting outside of their window or maybe right against the window, but it watches trains as they go by, and it captures an image of the train, like a full-length image. Like, it's so hard to describe, I'm sorry. Like, you can go onto this website that they've created. It has a web interface, and it will show you what train passed by at what time, which direction it was going, how fast it was going, and it'll show you exactly what the train looked like, so you can see all of the cars. It just stitches together a full image of the train. Like, that's insane. So you don't have to sit at your window and watch all the cool trains all day. You can just come home and check them out one at a time whenever you get back. And I thought that was pretty cool. It's a neat idea. I've never seen anything like it, and it's a fun use of a Raspberry Pi. And I don't know how they're going to use that for Pi Wars, but maybe they can. So yeah, check out the full list at Tom's Hardware. Do it.
I really quite like the train one, that actually stitching the images, so you've got like a panorama of the actual train. That's really good.
Yeah.
And you can actually check out the website at home. Like, you don't have, it's not just a local website, it's open to the internet, so you can go and look at the trains that they've been making. The train images, I mean. Avram, you're muted.
So without breaking this from the wire, I wanted to show you my little project that I was adding a piece to while we were talking. So this is a Pimoroni Tufty 2040 that you can use as a name badge. And I have programmed it so it has my name and Tom's Hardware and a QR code to go to the website. But I've also programmed these buttons to switch you to different things. So here's one with the best Raspberry Pi projects picture. And it's hard to see. You have to hold it off angle, but there's a QR code so you can scan. Someone could take a picture of it and go to that article. And then, like, I have another one here for, like, this article that Les had written about turning a banana into a touch control for your Pico.
Now that could be used at Pi Wars.
And also with also the QR code. So I figure, like, people could come, like, if I was wearing this to an event, which I did wear it to an event the other day, then people could come and scan my badge and go to our website in a shameless self-promotion. It is a little bit, the screen is a little bit small for people to notice when I'm wearing it around my neck. So I don't know. I might need something with a bigger display. The Tufty is, what is it, 2 inches, something like that, 2-inch screen, something like that, 1.8. Not very big. I mean, I do have the Pimoroni's Color E-Ink inky frame that 4-inch that I could also wear as a badge, and maybe I'll do that, but it seems like that might be too big, and it will be slow to change because it's e-ink. But it doesn't have to change.
Too big.
You could always find an old discarded 32-inch flat screen TV.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I like reminding people that the Galaxy Unicorn has, like, this big old honking Matrix has a little badge clip right there, so you can walk around with that.
There you go. But it actually has less detail than the Tufty because it's only like, what, 50.
Not even has a badge clip on it.
Yeah, I know. I have one too. I've shown at previous things how my son and I are working on, but we haven't quite finished a platformer game for this, where you'll be able to, like, run around like Mario and jump on like platforms with this. And we kind of got stuck on trying to make the music for it, so I got to get back to that, and plus how to get a good controller for it. Like, we want to have a joystick for it. So I'm trying to figure out, can I use this, like, joystick that's attached to an Feather RP2040 that has a stemma QT on it. This has a stemma QT input. So could I, like, use this as a controller for that? Like, that's another thing I would love to do. maybe this summer my son and I will have more time. But I wanted to have a shameless self-promotion for going to the Maker Faire.
Lucky.
And we're working on possibly getting or asking for a table at the next Maker Faire, which will be in Brooklyn, Coney Island, for those of you who are familiar with the New York area, in October. So
That's cool.
I'm hoping that they'll give me one. I've been chatting up the people who run it. So so we can have like a Tom's Hardware table and we can show some of the coolest projects that we've made and our community has made. So
Do a live podcast from it.
I would.
That would be really fun.
I would. That would be fun. Maybe I will. If I get the table. So yeah, I want to thank David, Tim, and Mike for joining us today to talk about Pi Wars. I'm so excited for this coming back. I want to see if I can go to this gives me time to plan. I want to see if I can go to the UK and drop by the Pi Wars in person, because I have been really wanting to plan a trip to UK. Our parent company is in the UK, so a lot of my coworkers are there, including Les. So thank you guys so much, and we will see everybody next week, the 13th, at the same time, 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern, 7 p.m. UK time, and we will talk to you then. Bye, everyone.
Bye.